I dropped everything to care for my dying father. My siblings visited twice. Now they're suing me for his inheritance. I, 36F, feel like I'm living in some alternate reality where caring for a dying parent makes you the villain. My dad died 3 months ago, pancreatic cancer, the kind that doesn't negotiate. I dropped my entire life in Chicago, good marketing job, decent apartment, friends, the whole thing, when he called me 2 years ago and said, "Kiddo, it's bad, real bad." I moved back home the next week. Mom had already decided she needed a break and was staying with my sister most days. My brother Derek lives 20 minutes away, but apparently his contracting business and 3 kids made it impossible to show up with any regularity. So I did it all, everything. I learned how to empty surgical drains from his abdomen by watching YouTube videos at midnight because the home health nurse had already left and it couldn't wait until morning. I held the bucket while he vomited bile at 3 a.m. and told him it was okay. We were okay, even when nothing was okay. I slept in a recliner for months because he was terrified of dying alone, and I could not bring myself to let him be. I tracked his medications on a spreadsheet I updated 3 times a day. I scheduled every appointment, drove him to every scan, sat in every waiting room. I called the insurance company so many times I had their hold music memorized and knew which representatives would actually help. The man who used to bench press me as a kid wasted away to 97 pounds while I fed him Ensure through a straw and pretended I wasn't crying. There were good days too, early on. Days where he'd be lucid and funny, and we'd watch old westerns together and argue about whether the Duke was actually a good actor or just a presence. Days where he'd squeeze my hand and say, "You're a good kid, Lauren, you always were." I held on to those like they were currency. Derek visited twice in 2 years, both times on holidays. Both times he stayed less than 4 hours and spent most of it on his phone in the kitchen. Mom came more often toward the end, but mostly to argue with Dad about money and leave when he got upset. Kayla, my younger sister, would come for a few hours here and there. She lives 3 states away and has a full-time job, and she seemed genuinely scared of watching him deteriorate. I don't blame her for that part. Grief does strange things to people. The will reading was last week. Dad's lawyer, Mr. Hargrove, has been our family attorney since I was born. He looked exhausted before he even started reading. The room was me, Mom, 64F, Derek, 38M, and Kayla, 32F. Derek brought his wife Ashley, which apparently wasn't allowed, but Hargrove didn't have the energy to kick her out. Dad left me the house, the one I grew up in, the one I cared for him in, the remaining investment accounts totaling about $1.8 million after taxes and medical bills, his truck, and all his personal effects. Mom gets the lake cabin, $400,000, and some jewelry. Derek and Kayla each get $200,000. The silence lasted about 4 seconds. Then Mom screamed, screamed, like someone had stabbed her. That manipulative bitch turned him against us. Derek stood up so fast his chair fell over. "This is fucking bullshit. She isolated him. We all know she isolated him." Kayla was crying, not the sad kind, the angry, entitled kind. Hargrove tried to explain that Dad had been of completely sound mind, had been evaluated by 2 doctors specifically for this purpose, and had made a video statement explaining everything. They didn't want to hear it. Mom, I was his wife for 41 years. Derek, I have 3 kids, Lauren. You don't even have a boyfriend. Kayla, this isn't fair. I just sat there. I couldn't speak. The house still smells like the antiseptic wipes I used on Dad's skin. His recliner is still in the living room with the permanent dent from where he spent his last 6 months, and they were fighting over it like it was Black Friday at Walmart. It's been nonstop since then. My phone blows up at all hours. The family group chat, which I eventually left, was a nightmare of screenshots and Bible verses about honoring your mother. Derek's wife Ashley kept leaving voicemails about how her children deserve their grandfather's legacy. Mom showed up at the house with a casserole like that was going to fix anything. "Lauren, honey," she said, all sweet like she hadn't called me a manipulative bitch 4 days earlier. "Your father wasn't in his right mind at the end. The pain meds. He didn't know what he was doing. We can fix this as a family. Derek needs the house. His business is struggling and the kids need stability." When I told her no, that Dad had been very clear about his reasons, she dropped the nice act. "You always were selfish, even as a little girl. Taking care of him was the least you could do after everything we sacrificed for you." Everything they sacrificed. I paid my own way through college. When I was 24 and going through a bad breakup and asked if I could come home for 2 months to get back on my feet, Mom said they didn't have space and suggested I go to a shelter. Dad tried to argue, but she wore him down. Now suddenly, I'm the one who owes them. Derek texted me this morning. Lawyer says we have a good shot at undue influence. Don't make this ugly, Lauren, just do what's right. Part of me wonders if I should just give them something to make it stop. The house feels too big and every room has a memory of Dad dying in it. But then I remember him grabbing my hand 2 weeks before the end, looking at me with those sunken eyes and saying, I know what they're like. Don't let them take what's yours. I protected it for you. Und and pray, however, one marriage backing hen said, I can't support any more costs than a Victorian sate. The harm's supposed to be hit the middle of the point. They actually sued me, not a strongly worded letter, a full petition to contest the will, undue influence, lack of capacity, the works. I got served at the goddamn grocery store like I was on an episode of Law and Order. I went to see Hargrove the same day. He wasn't surprised. Apparently, Mom had called him the morning after the reading and demanded he fix the will. When he told her it wasn't fixable, she called him a crooked bastard who was in on it. He showed me the video. I wasn't ready for it. Dad looked so small on that screen. His face was hollowed out in a way that the memory had softened, but his voice was steady. He said, if you're watching this, it means I'm gone, and my family is probably losing their shit. He looked straight at the camera. Lauren, I'm sorry for putting you in this position, but I needed to protect what was left. Your mother and I, things haven't been right for years. She moved out 6 months before I even told you I was sick. Derek's been borrowing against the business using my name without telling me. I found out last year. Kayla isn't strong enough to stand up to them. Then, I know what I did. I know who showed up. Don't you dare feel guilty. I cried so hard I almost threw up in Hargrove's trash can. The new information that made me see red, Dad had revoked Mom's power of attorney 8 months before he died. She apparently kept using an old form and transferred $87,000 from his accounts into Derek's business. Hargrove has the bank records. They knew he was dying and they were draining him. When I confronted Mom on the phone, she said, it was marital assets. I had every right. I told her to go fuck herself and hung up. Derek showed up at the house that night. I didn't let him in, but talked to him through the Ring camera. Lauren, come on. We can drop the lawsuit. Just give me the house and we'll split the money 4 ways. Fair is fair. I laughed so hard I think I scared him. Fair? You mean like it was fair when I asked to come home after my breakup and you told Dad to his face that I was a drain on the family? He didn't even deny it. Just said, we all say things when we're stressed. I'm not giving them anything. This was never about grief. This was about money they'd already decided was theirs. Kayla has been texting me separately. Just, can we talk? Over and over. I'm not ready for that yet. Update 2. Kayla came over. She showed up crying at 11 p.m., which is such a Kayla move. I almost didn't open the door, but she looked small, like when we were kids and Mom would scream at us. She told me things I didn't know. Apparently, Mom and Derek had been planning to put Dad in a state-run facility as soon as I went back to Chicago. They had the paperwork started. They didn't think I'd actually quit my job and stay. When I did, it wrecked their timeline. Derek's business is leveraged to the hilt. He's been pulling money from Dad for years, and the banks are close to foreclosing on everything. But the part that made me sick was what she said about the last months. They were angry you were here because Dad kept changing things. Every time he left the room, he'd call Hargrove. Mom tried to get him declared incompetent twice. The second time, the doctor threatened to call Adult Protective Services because she got physical with him when he wouldn't sign something. Physical with him. My father, who weighed 90 pounds at the end. I asked her why she didn't tell me, why she didn't help. She said Mom threatened to cut her off, said I was already lost, but she could still be the good daughter. Then she showed me screenshots of texts between Mom and Derek from right after Dad died. In them, Derek says, we need to get that cunt out of the house before she finds the old will. The old will, the one from before I came home, the one that split everything equally but had a clause about providing for my future care, added after my bad breakup because Dad had been quietly worried about me being alone. The will we have now is newer, from 4 months before he died. Kayla thinks they have the old one and are planning to submit it as the real one. She's willing to testify, but she's terrified. I told her she could stay the night in her old room. She cried again. Derek called while Kayla was still here. I put it on speaker. You think you're so fucking smart, he said. We have the original will. Hargrove's going to look like he helped you forge the new one. Walk away now or we'll destroy you. Kayla looked at me with pure terror. I hung up and looked at my sister, someone I hadn't trusted in 15 years, and asked, what do we do now? She didn't answer. She just stared at Dad's recliner like it might swallow us both. Update 3. I'm writing this from a hotel. Someone broke into the house last night. Not just broke in, they were looking for something. Dad's office was destroyed. Every drawer pulled out, the filing cabinet pried open with a crowbar. My laptop is gone. The external hard drive with all his medical records and the copies Hargrove gave me is gone. They left the TV, the jewelry, the cash in my purse upstairs. They only took things that mattered for the lawsuit. The police came. I told them everything: the lawsuit, the texts, the $87,000 transfer. They looked at me like I was unstable until I showed them the ring footage. The person was wearing a mask, but I'd know Derek's neck tattoo anywhere, the one he got in 2009 that says "No regrets." The cop just sighed and said, "Family disputes are the worst." Kayla won't answer her phone. I drove by Mom's this morning and her car is gone. Hargrove called an hour ago. Someone delivered an envelope to his office. Inside were screenshots of texts that look like they're from me to Dad. I tell him Mom and Derek are dangerous and that he needs to leave me everything or they'll make his last months hell. The texts are dated to when Dad was on morphine and couldn't work his phone. They're good, scary good. Hargrove says it doesn't matter, that the video will and the doctor's evaluations will hold up, but his voice sounded different, like he's starting to realize how dirty this is going to get. Then Mom emailed me from an account I didn't recognize. Subject line: last chance. One sentence in the body: you should have shared. And an attachment: a photo of Dad's gun safe, open, empty. I don't know where that gun is anymore. Update 4. I'm writing this from my car 2 towns over because I'm genuinely scared to be anywhere near the house. Kayla finally called at 3:17 a.m., not from her phone, from a prepaid she bought at a gas station. Her voice was so hoarse I barely recognized her. "Lauren, Mom has the gun. Derek's been waving it around at her house like some action hero. He keeps saying, 'This is how we fix the will,' and laughing. I think he's on something." She told me the rest, the parts she'd been too scared to say before. The night Dad died, Mom and Derek didn't wait 12 hours. While I was at the funeral home making arrangements like a zombie, they were in his office going through every drawer. Kayla walked in on them celebrating when they found the old will. They were high-fiving. But the part that made me pull over and throw up was this. They've been forging documents for over a year. Mom has been practicing Dad's signature on medical forms since the second round of chemo. Derek admitted to Kayla, drunk, waving the gun, that the original will they're planning to submit is a scanned copy of the old one with new pages inserted. They thought because I was the one doing the caregiving that I'd be too exhausted to notice the paperwork. And then Kayla said the worst thing yet. "Lauren, the morphine doses. Mom kept adjusting them when you went to the store. I saw her. I think she was trying to make him go faster before he could change the will again." I haven't slept since that call. Hargrove met me at his office at 7 a.m. with his litigation partner, a woman who looks like she eats cases like this for breakfast. They're filing criminal charges now, not just civil. The $87,000 transfer, the POA forgery, the break-in. The detective perked up when I mentioned the gun. Apparently, Derek's been posting cryptic things on Facebook about reclaiming what's ours that isn't helping his case. I keep replaying Dad's video. The way he said, "I know what they're like." He knew all of it, and he still tried to protect me while he was dying, while he had almost nothing left to give. That's the part I think about most, not the betrayal of my mother and brother. That's its own grief I'll be unpacking for years. But the fact that my father, in the last months of his life, was spending whatever clarity he had left, trying to make sure I'd be okay after he was gone. At Dynamic. It's over, sort of. Derek was arrested last Tuesday. The gun was in his truck, unregistered, with his prints on it. The detective told me they found a notebook in Mom's house with practice signatures and notes about timing the morphine. Hargrove says Mom is likely looking at elder abuse, financial exploitation, and several other felonies. Derek's business is done. The banks foreclosed while he was being processed. His wife Ashley took the kids and went to her parents. Last I heard, she's filing for divorce. I should feel vindicated. I don't, exactly. Vindication implies the fight was worth having, and I'm still not sure any fight that ends with your mother in jail and your brother's marriage dissolved and your little sister shaking on a witness stand was worth having. It happened. It's done. I survived it. I sold the house. I couldn't stay there. Every time I walked past Dad's recliner, I heard him struggling to breathe. The closing is next month. I'm keeping the investment accounts and the truck. I gave Kayla $150,000, even though my lawyer screamed at me about it. She's moving to Colorado. We're not close. I don't think we ever will be, but she did the right thing when it counted, and I'm not going to hold the years of fear against her. Mom called me once from jail. I answered by accident. The first thing she said was, "This is your fault. If you had just shared, none of this would have happened." I laughed until I cried. Then I told her I hoped the prison food reminded her of all the casseroles she never brought Dad. Then I hung up and blocked the number. I'm back in Chicago now. Different apartment, different job. My friends don't quite know what to say, so they just hug me a lot, which is more than enough. Some nights I still wake up reaching for the recliner that isn't there anymore. The muscle memory of all those months of sleeping light, listening for him. The body remembers things the mind is still trying to put down. I went to therapy. I want to be honest about that because it feels important to say. The therapist I'm seeing specializes in caregiver grief, which is apparently its own specific kind of loss, not just grief for the person you lost, but grief for the version of yourself that existed before and the years that went into the caregiving that you can't get back. She said something in our third session that I keep coming back to. You were a good daughter. You were a good daughter before he got sick, and you were one while he was sick, and nothing your family did or said changes what you actually did. I cried for about 20 minutes. She sat there and let me. Hargrove gave me a letter from Dad last week, one I hadn't known about until the case closed, and he felt it was safe to pass along. Dad had written it himself, in the handwriting that had gone shaky from the medication by the end, but it was still legible. He must have done it on a good day, one of those days when he was lucid and present and himself. One line, "Kiddo, I'm proud of you. Now go live." I'm trying, Dad. I'm really trying. But every time my phone rings with an unknown number, part of me still wonders if this is actually over. I think that part might be with me for a while. I'm learning to make room for it and keep moving anyway.
Hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please like and subscribe. See you in the next one.